Okay, so I wanted to make a little video about my class that I taught today about adding in assets and objects to our scene and how we can modify those objects and adding materials and adding rigid bodies and colliders. So this is my completed view here. So I have these spheres, I have elongated rectangles, this purple rectangle here. We have a light source. We have assets that make these spheres bouncy, that have friction. I will go ahead and show you how to add those, or what takes place to add and modify and rotate and change these objects in your scene. Okay? Let's go ahead and start. So let's make a new scene, or a new project, rather. Let's make a 2D project. Let's hit create. I can change my name here as well, right here. Mr. Gabe's. Okay, hit create. I'm gonna close this down. Actually, you know what? I'll just leave it there. We'll reference it back in a little bit. It's just gonna take just a minute to finish loading up Unity. Let's go ahead and pause for a minute and we'll come back to it when it's done. Okay, so I have a new scene here in Unity. I made a 2D scene. And we also have a game view. So scene view is where you can add and edit your objects. Game is where you test. So you're going to hit play up here to test your objects. So let's go back to scene. This is our hierarchy. This is our project folder. This is where our assets will show up that we create. And this is our inspector. This is where we can edit the numbers and our values in our objects. Okay, first I want to add some rectangles. So you saw over here, let's go to this completed view. So I have rectangles. How did I add those? Let's go to my second view. So we're going to go to hierarchy and we're going to right click. Just a minute. Okay, we are going to add some objects to our scene. So you see here in this checkerboard area, or not checkerboard, you know what I mean. We have this bounding box, the camera in the middle. Now what I want to do is I want to add some objects inside of this white rectangle. So we're going to go to hierarchy, we're going to right click, we're going to go to 3D objects. I know we're making a 2D scene, but this is where you go for things like cubes, spheres, capsules, cylinders, all sorts of things. So we're going to add some cubes. Now it starts out as a cube, but I want to make it into a long rectangle. So you can do that a number of ways. So you can go to, up here, there's a list of commands you can do. So there's a hand tool. The hand tool, if you click it, it just moves around your scene. This here is your move tool. That'll move it in the vertical or horizontal. Next to it, you have the rotate tool. This rotates your sphere. Cube. Next to it, you have scale. So you can scale it vertical or horizontal. Or you can go to the button next to that, the rect tool. And this gives you these little nodes on each corner of the cube. And you can move it this way, you can move it this way. So it's just, what I like about this one here is it allows you to change how, like, the dimensions of your object. And if you click here in the middle, it allows you to move it too. So let's move it to the bottom. This will be our base of our scene. You can make it thin, thick, it doesn't matter. So let's place it here. So this is our scene. So say we want to hit play, see what happens. Let's do that. Let's go to game view, right here with the little Pac-Man guy. Let's hit play. nothing happens. That's because there are no properties set to this. So let's go back to scene. Let's click on it. Now over in the right hand side you have your inspector. This is where you can change all your values. And you can rotate, you can change your position from here. This is just the rectangle. But we're going to look at this box collider. So the collider is a bounding box around this rectangle that says nothing is allowed to go past that rectangle. So if, say, a ball went to bounce and hit that, it won't go through. Okay? So let's click on that again. But this is a box collider for 3D, and we want to make it a 2D. So let's right-click that. And when you right-click where it says box collider, you can remove it. So let's remove that. Let's add our own. So while this is still selected, we're going to add a component to it. And when we add components, this is a 2D game, so we're going to add 2D physics. So we're going to click on 2D, and up here, we're going to add a box collider 2D. What that does is it adds a green collider around the whole outside of it. Now we're going to click off that. Now let's test it. Now we need to add a ball that's going to interact with this rectangle. So let's go to hierarchy. We're going to right click, add 3D object. We're going to add a sphere. Okay, so here's our sphere. Now you can move it in two different ways. You can use it with the rect tool, or you can use the move tool. Okay, it's up to you. I'm going to scale it by hitting shift on your keyboard and then left clicking on the mouse. You can make it bigger, you can make it smaller. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because I want this to be our whole scene here. So you notice here that this has a sphere collider. That's great, but we want to get rid of it. We want to make it a 2D. So we're going to get rid of it, right click, remove component. We're going to add a new component. We're going to go to 2D physics, and then we're going to go to circle collider because it's a circle in 2D. Now that has a collider on it. So this can now collide with this. But, so watch. We're going to hit play and you're going to see what happens. So we have this. So all we're telling these two objects is that they're going to be able to touch. Let's see if that happens. Let's go to game view and hit play. Aha, but we don't have any gravity. So if you go back to scene view, you look. So we have colliders, and this is telling us the material, its radius, things like that. But we need to give it properties to move on its own. So we're going to go to add component while we're selecting on the circle. And we're going to go to physics 2D. And you're going to look for a component called rigidbody 2D. And it has to have the 2D, remember that? And you can also type it in too. R-I-G. So you see at the top, it shows up with rigidbody 2D. So we're going to click that. It's going to add this component to the circle. So this is our rigid body. This is saying it's dynamic, that it has, there's no material, it's simulated, so it has a mass, linear drag, angular drag, gravity. So we're going to worry about just these right here. So its mass is 1, there's a 0 drag, 0.5 angular drag, and it's got a gravity of 1. So let's see what that does. And we're going to go back over to game view, and we're going to hit play. So it falls. It drops, doesn't do anything. It just sits there. But since they both have a collider, that means that they're going to touch and not pass through each other. So let's re-hit play. That disengages the game mode. Let's go back to scene. Now let's say we want to make it bounce. We're going to click on the circle. We're going to go to project down here. We're going to give it an asset. We're going to give it properties. Let's go in a menu. So for mine, I can see the whole menu, but you might have to scroll up or down to find it. but we're looking for something that's called physics material 2D. So click that, and all that's doing is it's adding it here on the bottom in the assets. But we want to add this to the circle. So if you notice, when I click on this, we have a little bar to the right. We're going to change that, because right now the bounciness is 0. Maybe let's change it to 1. We're going to give it a value of 1. But to add that, we have to click the circle, and on the right we have our rigid body. That's where our mass is and our gravity scale. But we want to add it to its material. Since this is a physics material, we want it to go to the material slot. Okay? So while this circle is selected, we move it over, we hold and drag. That's the key, hold and drag to the material slot. See how it turns kind of a whitish blue? Once you're over that, you're going to let go. Now you notice that there is a material now, which is this one. So let's see what happens, okay? So from scene view, go to game view, hit play. Now we've got some bounce. That's pretty cool. But it's kind of boring. We need more objects. Let's add more objects. So you notice in my original scene, so I have different objects here. This is just sort of a test scene that I set up. So let's go over here, and let's go to scene view to edit. On the bottom we have our rectangular object that has a collider that says nothing goes through it. So let's make a copy of it. So while it's selected, Control C, Control V, and that copies it. Okay. Bring this up. After I've copied it, we're going to give ourselves a ceiling here. I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to make it a little bit wider. Doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so we have a ceiling and a floor. Let's make that a little bit deeper. Now since this already has our collider on it, I'm just going to copy it. So Control C, Control V, and we're going to go to the Move tool. We're going to move it up, and I'm going to rotate it. And you can go to our Rotate tool, and you can rotate it here, or in the transform, because we're transforming it. So you're going to go to, I think is it Z? Yeah. So see how on the right hand side in the inspector, see the number change? So we're going to change it to a positive 90, enter, and then you can move this over. So we're going to have a left wall. I'm going to copy it again. So I'm going to copy this by selecting it, Control Z, C, Control V. And then we're going to move that over here. So we have a right wall within our window. And I'm going to move the ball over here. I'm going to make another wall, but I'm going to make it sort of a ramp. Control C, Control V. Now I can move it. Now we're going to change the angle here. So see over here in the inspector, I have it selected, and when you roll over the Z, you see the two arrows, and you hold it, and you can change the angle. Okay? I've got one here. I'm going to make another one. Control C, Control V. That makes a copy. I'm going to change the Z over here on the right. I'm going to change that. Hold down in the middle here. Okay. You can change it a little bit more if you want to. Give it a different angle. And let's see what that does. So from scene view, go to game view, hit play. So that's pretty cool. So every time you hit play, it's going to be completely different. The physics will be different, the way that it interacts with the base, and these two slanted walls. That's fun, but it could be even better if we go back to scene. Let's make some copies. I wonder if I can make, oh, also, so if you don't want to make a copy here with your keyboard using Control C and V, that's kind of a shortcut, but you can also go to Edit up top, Edit, while you're selecting the circle, copy, edit, paste. Now I've got another one. Let's do it again. Edit, copy, edit, paste. There we go. So each one of these circles has the same property. It has a collider and it has a rigid body 2D that's giving it its mass and its gravity scale. Let's go to scene, play. Now, so they're interacting with the vertical, well, the slanted walls, and they're interacting with the bottom layer and themselves. So this could go on for a couple minutes, for quite a while. But say we want a little bit of variety. So hit the play button up top to stop your animation, your game scene. Let's go back to scene. So each one of these you can change the properties. So mess with the properties. It doesn't have to be the exact same as mine. So select a circle, go to your rigid body. Let's change the mass. Let's make this a mass of 7. Let's make it really heavy. Let's make the gravity 3. Let's go to select this one. Let's make this a gravity of, maybe just 1. Let's make the mass 2. And let's make this one a gravity of 0.5 and a mass, let's leave it at 1. Let's see what that does. Go to game view, hit play, and you'll notice they drop at a different rate and there's different gravity applied. So there's one in the middle on the bottom. Now it's going a lot faster. So it's got a different gravity. That's why it's staying in the air longer. It doesn't have as much mass, and the gravity that's forced to that circle isn't quite as great. And this will probably go on for a long time, this little game simulation. So we have our walls, we have our bottom, we have our roof, we have our 2 slanted walls. Add something different. Make it a game. Maybe make it sort of, oh, you know what you could do is you could add more objects in here that just have a box collider attached to it. So say we want to add a bunch of those. Let's do that. See what happens. Let's copy this top ceiling. Copy, paste. Let's make it smaller. Let's make a bunch of those. So I'm just copying and pasting. Oops. So all I'm doing is you can either do Control C and V to make a bunch here, or you can just select your object and do copy paste. Okay? Make a bunch. See what happens. I'm going to change this one to make it a little bit shorter. Looks kind of silly being all the way over there. Make that a little cleaner. Oops. Well, that's fine for now. Let's just see what happens when we have all these here. Let's bring our start position, because these 3 circles are only ones that are going to drop, because we added physics and we added a rigid body. Okay, so let's bring one over here, one over here. Let's hit play and see what happens. Oops. So this guy has a low gravity and a low mass, while this guy has a higher gravity and a bigger mass. And this one's somewhat in between. And they're colliding with these because these all have colliders. Pretty fun. Now let's add some color. Let's add some color. So down here in project, we can add some color. So we're going to hit the create button. Either scroll up or down, find your material. It's going to add a material in the asset. Now right now this doesn't affect anything until you move it to something else. So if you want to change the color of this material, you go here to the inspector, find the color, pick any color you want. Let's pick purple. Now let's drag it up to our circles. Now they're going to be purple, but they kind of look a little flat. But you notice over here there's no light source. Let's add a light source by going into hierarchy, right click, light. Let's put a directional light. That'll make it nice and bright. See how better they look? They look a little 3D too. So you can even add colors to your walls. Let's add another material. Remember, create, material. There's another material. Let's change that color to, let's do green. That looks like fun. So you just click, drag, click, drag, click, drag. There we go. Now go over to game, play. There you go. Play around with this, guys. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. Enjoy. Let me know what you think. All right.